Hi, welcome to the Empowering Parents webcast developed by LifeWork. I have put together this program for you. I am Rachel Livesey. I am a nationally certified DBT therapist and have been working a lot with families at our practice. So this first webcast is going to talk to you about the states of mind we kind of live in as parents and as people, as you are a person outside of being a parent. So I want us to start and get tuned in by beginning with a mindfulness activity. So go ahead and take a moment and become comfortable in whatever seat you are sitting in. And when you are ready, I want you to start by taking one deep breath and really notice your inhale and your exhale. For the next minute, I want you to scan in your body how you're feeling. Starting at the top of your head, begin to search for any tension you might be holding and check in each muscle group. Check in your neck, your shoulders, your back, your abdomen, your hips, your legs, and your feet. See if you're holding any tension. And breathe through each body muscle. Take a deep breath and try to relax. If you notice any tension that you're holding, try to let it go. And as we finish up this mindfulness, I want you to take one last cleansing breath, really becoming present with this moment. So often we go throughout our day putting our experiences in the back of our mind, especially when there's a crisis. We sometimes don't pay enough attention to how we're feeling. And I think parents can often feel selfish for focusing on themselves whenever their young person's in a crisis or is emotionally dysregulated. So do you know what the results are of not paying attention to yourself? We actually become less effective with responding, and we tend to be more reactive to the situation. This can escalate a crisis at home and also can leave you feeling exhausted, burned out, and frustrated. Which is all places that I totally get why parents end up there, and we want to try to avoid it. So I want you to think of the most recent crisis your young person experienced that you were involved with at some level. So just for clarification, a crisis can be any dysregulation, including lashing out, disordered eating, self-harm, suicide attempt, suicidal threats, substance abuse, any isolating or withdrawing behavior, avoidance of anything, everything, any sexual behaviors, academic issues, work problems. Anything can constitute a crisis. So I want you to think for a minute, what was the last time that you were involved with a crisis? Okay, and I want you to take out your worksheet. You should have had this attached to the program. And for week 1 states of mind, at the top it says to kind of write down, how did you respond during that moment? Really think about what were some of the things you said and did. Think about your body posture and your tone of voice. Did you talk over your young person while they were trying to talk? Were you distracted and given very little focus? Just really think about how you reacted or responded. And I'll give you a minute to just think about that and write down some of the things that you can recall that you did. Okay, so and if you need to pause as you go to give yourself more time, please do so. But let's kind of tuck that away and see where you might fall in the states of mind. So in general, we have three states of mind, and that's what this diagram kind of depicts here. So we have emotion mind, we have wise mind, and we have reason mind. And there are benefits and disadvantages to each state of mind. Well, at least to reason mind and emotion mind. So let's talk about each. Emotion mind is typically a more reactive state of mind that we can be kind of stuck in or propelled into. And in this state of mind, we can blame, we can judge, we can actually give stricter punishments, we can shut down, invalidate the other person. Usually, we're not very effective at this time. So I want you to think, how how do you see your emotion mind present itself while you're parenting? Um, are there judgments? Are you screaming and yelling? Are you slamming doors? Are you shutting down and becoming unresponsive? Are you giving the cold shoulder, disapproving looks? Like, what ways does the emotion mind actually present itself for you? So again, I'm going to give you another minute to kind of think through how you kind of can be an emotion mind at times. So let's dig in a little bit more deeply to emotion mind. As I've been working with families and especially with parents here at LifeWork, I can often hear parents talk about really strong emotions like fear, sadness, guilt, shame, and anger. So I want to talk about each and how each of these emotions can actually affect and impact you as you parent and respond to your young person in crisis. Fear. So just backing up, being a parent in general, I always kind of say that as soon as this newborn or this infant is placed into our arms or into our homes, that bundle of joy also comes with a bundle of nerves. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of worries about my kids at each age, what they're having to experience and what kind of barriers or obstacles they have to overcome. So it makes sense that when your young person struggles with feeling out of control with emotions and behaviors, that you may actually worry about their future. A lot of times these worries have a lot of validity. You probably have a long enough history or a severe enough history to have the concerns you do. And potentially some of your fears may be about the situation being kind of life-threatening for your child or for your young person. So I know it's easy when you're in these crises to worry, are they going to make it through? Especially in the life-threatening type. But you can also think about worries about their quality of life. What kind of quality of life is my kid going to have if they continue to have the struggles that they do, financially, academically, relationally, whatever it might be? So I want you to think for a moment about what worries you have, either in general about your young person, or what worries you had at a specific time, like the crisis that you wrote about when we first started this worksheet. So again, take a minute, pause me if needed, and we'll go on to the next emotion. Okay, if that wasn't enough time, again, pause. But let's talk about sadness. There is a lot of sadness and pain that your young person probably experiences. It's hard to watch your young person go through the struggles and experience the type and amount of pain that they do on a regular basis sometimes. Um, and when that pain becomes so intense, you can see them reaching out for certain behaviors that might give them relief. And unfortunately, those behaviors are typically ineffective long term and probably short term as well. But I think outside of their sadness, I think there's sadness for parents for the loss that is there. I hear a lot of parents talking about they had certain expectations or hopes for their kid, and they just didn't imagine life was going to be this way for them. And all the loss of the relationship that you hoped for, the connection with your young person that you may not get often enough or at all, or maybe feeling hopeless about things improving. So I want you to take a minute, kind of jot down what sadness you might feel with your young person, kind of regularly sadness or in the moment. When they're in crisis, do you feel any kind of sadness that this is what they have to deal with? So you can really connect with that. The next emotion is guilt. I think we are designed as humans to kind of look at what we've messed up on. Our culture isn't really the nicest when it comes to giving constructive feedback to parents. And I know as a parent, I often feel like I caused this somehow. I messed up. There was something that I did. And we tend to blame ourselves. So I want you to kind of keep in mind a dialectical answer to this, and we'll get more into that as this webcast evolves, that you're not the cause of their dysregulation, and you might have a role in it. So guilt makes sense at times to acknowledge the role that we've had, and how do you walk around with that guilt? Does it affect how you parent? Does it affect how you react to your young person? Do you feel responsible or embarrassed by the way that they react? So I want you to recall a time, or recall if you've experienced any blame on yourself or embarrassment with how your young person reacted. And again, write that down under the emotion mind on your worksheet. All right, so anger tends to be one of the easier emotions to express, just kind of in general. It's really frustrating to keep finding yourself and your young person back at the same kind of situations over and over and over again. And it's very angering and upsetting when they're invalidating of you and all that you're trying to do, all the help that you're trying to give. You've got to be so tired of the same ineffective behaviors happening. We often have lots of judgments of our young people that kind of fuel that anger, like lazy, irresponsible, manipulative, selfish, etc. So I want you to think about anger and how it shows up for you, and especially if it's happening more in your interactions, specific interactions, during the crises, after the crises is something you walk around with. How does anger really present itself when you think about and when you have to deal with these crises? Again, think about how that shows up and write it down on your worksheet. So we've gone over fear, sadness, guilt, and anger, and I'm sure there are other emotions that are out there. These are kind of big umbrellas, so if there are other words or emotions that fit better, kind of go more into that, or keep an eye out this week for how you feel when you think about your young person or when you're in interactions with them. But I also, for just a moment, I want you to think back on some of the things that you just wrote down, some of the observations you have about yourself and how you react. And I want you to try to create something called anchor points. And its anchor points are something that you can know, this means I'm feeling this way. This, I can kind of anchor into myself to know that this is how I'm feeling, to know that I'm more an emotion mind and I need to kind of get out of this place because I tend to be less effective here. So fear, how can you know that you're in a fear-based kind of emotion mind? Is it a racing heart? Is it a certain worry thought that you have? Do you have a rush of adrenaline? Or sadness? Do you feel all of a sudden a lack of energy? Do you feel a heaviness on your shoulders? Do you feel tears welling up? How does sadness present itself? Maybe thoughts, specific thoughts, like looking back on what you wrote down, looking at, are there any anchor points in sadness? Like my kid will never get better. They're going to have a life of suffering. That's not necessarily true, but are those the thoughts that you have that you can kind of anchor into? Or guilt. Does your head fall down a little bit? Do you have urges to avoid your kid or other people or places? Or is it a judgment of you that you can kind of anchor into? And anger. Do you all of a sudden feel a heat flash, or does your jaw clench up? Do you tense up? A lot of times our bodies physically tense up with anger or fear or other emotions, I'm sure. But really notice, how can you anchor into that anger? We're going to talk a little bit more about what anchor points can help you with. But again, take a moment and really, at that last line on emotion minus this anchor point, so write down a few that you can really stay mindful of throughout the week. All right, let's jump over to reasonable mind. It's the opposite of emotion mind. It is filled with logic and facts. Most of the time, people can see this as an ideal state of mind, and it has its advantages. Each state of mind has benefits to it, but the downfall of reason mind is it can appear insensitive and cold, and really disconnected. It can really hurt relationships when you have someone trying to emotionally connect. That in reasonable mind, it's not very easy to emotionally connect. So when you have a child who experiences intense emotions, you have to attend to their emotions at some point to help connect and get the solutions that you need and want. Another session will focus more on validation, which helps balance out the reason mind and some of the workshops that we have here at LifeWork are also really great for helping you to figure that out too. So how does reasonable mind actually present itself? Sometimes we have thoughts like, well, you're 16, you should be able to drive yourself to school by now. Or you're 23, you should be in charge of your own finances and should be able to live independently. You're old enough now that you should be able to handle this kind of stuff. And maybe you even have thoughts to support these like, it's not that hard or it's not that big of a deal. You just get in the car, you put the key in, you turn it, and the engine starts and you steer the vehicle. Or you just don't spend money on extra things so that you have money for rent and for food. So these are very reason-mind thoughts. There is validity in those thoughts. So I just want to point out the disadvantage of that. If you have a child that doesn't struggle with emotion regulation, these thoughts absolutely make sense. You're kind of getting down to the basics. You're sticking with the facts, and you're saying, well, this is just what you do. Okay? But when you have a person that has an inability to regulate their emotions and their behaviors, regardless of age, the facts and that just do it mentality will not actually work. It will actually create more problems for your young person when they're trying to know how to create effective changes and what's the best route for that. So I want you for a minute to think, what expectations do you have for your young person? Are they based on age or just being old enough? Think about how do you approach things in a very factual way, and how has that gone for you with your young person? Have you been able to see the changes happen as a result of that conversation? If so, it sounds maybe pretty effective. But if you're not seeing the changes, or maybe especially if it escalates a crisis or escalates an argument, then you're really looking at where reason mind is not helping you. So think about how reason mind shows up for you, both in how you approach problems, and maybe not just your problems, but your young person's problems, in your interactions with them, and just outside of that in general. So take a moment. So after you've kind of figured out how reason mind kind of shows up for you, and maybe it doesn't, maybe you're more an emotion mind, but maybe you're also the type of parent that really falls more into reason mind. I see most of the time people in either one, predominantly, but we can also kind of jump back and forth between the two, so that's fair. I want you to create some anchor points. Like, how would you know you're in reason mind? What types of thoughts would you have that can be those anchor points that you can kind of anchor into being in reason mind? Like, you know, this is your reason mind. Is it a thought? Is it a lack of feeling? Are you just boom, 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 analyzing and figuring out what needs to happen and not really taking in what your young person is saying? Or you have quick solutions for your young person? But think about, how can you anchor into knowing this is my reason mind? And I'll give you another minute. Again, pause me if you need to. So let's talk about what wise mind actually is, and it is the balance of emotion mind and reason mind. Our goal is to find some kind of balance. This is where we can drop judgments and blame and attend to their emotions and our own effectively, and provide solutions that are actually going to work well. Balance solutions with emotion and reason. This is a place where you feel your emotions and you can respond to them instead of react to them. So I want to repeat this because this is really important. Wise mind is a place where you can feel your emotions and you can respond with them instead of reacting to them. So this is knowledgeable because we need to be able to use both our reason and our emotions to guide us. Emotion mind is reactive, but so is reason mind. It's solution reactive. So blending the two can actually be really beneficial in helping you connect and solve problems. So for example, after your child engages in an ineffective behavior, you can express your sadness or fear and offer to help them. Instead of reacting with emotion mind, why'd you do that again? How could you? You know the rules. You might respond with, "It sounds like you're in pain and you engaged in whatever behavior. What do you need now?" So it's a different type of reaction. It's not a reaction, it's a response. So the reaction again is something off the cuff like, "Why'd you do that again? How could you? You know the rules." Versus responding, "It sounds like you were in a lot of pain and you engaged in self-harm. What do you need right now?" See the difference? Making these slight changes in how you respond can bring more effectiveness at home. Responding effectively requires balance from you. So your young person obviously has their work cut out for them, and so do you. So kind of remembering you're not the cause of their dysregulation, and you have a role in it. So if you become more reactive to them, they're going to become more reactive. It kind of bounces off of each other at times. I'm sure if you reflect back on it, you can kind of see how your reactivity has increased their reactivity. So you staying balanced doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be balanced, but it can help things kind of stay at that same level, and then also gives the actual opportunity for them to come down gradually and more effectively. So part of this week's practice is involved in you recognizing the different states of mind you have, because each person's is different, and when you think about your young person and how you interact with them. So keep working on building these anchor points and really figuring out how emotion mind presents itself, how reason mind presents itself, and what wise mind can actually look like as a goal. So moving right along, let's actually talk more about finding wise mind. So we've talked about the states of mind, reason mind and emotion mind, and really understanding those. And I just introduced you to the concept of wise mind for the first time. So let's talk about how do you actually find it, okay? So remember, the goal is to be effective, and when we're off balance, either stuck in emotion mind or reason mind, we lose effectiveness. It doesn't mean that you weren't still effective, it just means we lose some effectiveness. The DBT definition of effectiveness is doing what works. The way you respond to your young person, again, can be different than how you were raised or how you respond to other kids that you have in the home. Because we have to adjust how we respond in order to do what works for each kid, regardless of age. So remembering those anchor points, those are critical in you making any changes. You have to know where you are to make any changes. If I don't acknowledge that I'm in emotion mind, I can't do anything about it. If I don't acknowledge that I'm in reason mind, I can't do anything about it. So observing and knowing that you're in that state of mind is the most important first step. The next step for you is actually figuring out, how do I get myself closer to this wise mind, back to a balanced state of mind. So when you're in emotion mind, we're going to start there. I want you to just recognize that you've gotten into emotion mind using your anchor points, and remember to try to use some strategies to get yourself more balanced. So with reason and emotion mind, you're going to actually use the same skill first. It's called the stop skill. Each letter stands for a different skill, but it all compiles to one big skill. So S stands for stop. So this can actually be physically stopping yourself from reacting. You might actually freeze, or you block saying anything else at that point in time. Stop. T is take a step back. It can be in your mind, or you can physically take a step back to kind of get unstuck. When we have strong emotions, sometimes we get stuck in seeing it one way, and our mind becomes too narrowed in, especially with fear. Fear kind of narrows our perspective, but intense emotion does it too. So taking a step back, you're hopefully trying to open up your perspective. O is observe what is happening around you. How is your young person reacting to you? And you're trying to do that in a pretty non-judgmental way, that you're not adding more fuel to the fire. And we'll talk about that next week. So what's going on inside you? How are you feeling? What are your thoughts? Are you having any urges to do something like punish or judge or say, how could you have done this? What types of urges might you have? So observing is really noted, like internally noticing as well as externally really taking in what the moment is. And P is proceed mindfully. Ask yourself, what do I want from the situation? How can I be effective? And what's the goal? What choice might make the situation better or worse? So this is accounting for emotions and facts. What is actually going to help right now in this current moment with my young person? What is my goal? What am I trying to teach them and help them with short term and long term? Sometimes emotion mind is more reactive and it gets us short term solutions, but it actually doesn't help us achieve our long term goals with them. So, really proceeding mindfully in that specific moment after you've kind of taken everything in. So for the next few minutes, think of a recent situation in which you responded with emotion mind. It can be the same one we started with, or it can be a totally new or different one that you remembered as we were talking through emotion mind. So again, recall a moment on the recent side that you responded in emotion mind. So on your worksheet, you can kind of jot that down up top. When I'm in emotion mind, these are my anchor points. So you might write a little bit about what the situation was. Now with that situation in mind, I want you to pinpoint the moment when you notice any of those anchor points. So we just practice identifying those anchor points, so think back and you look for any of those anchor points we just recognized. Okay, keeping the same situation in mind, I want you to kind of place yourself back there in your mind. And the anchor point that you recognize that you became less effective. Everyone got that point, the point in the situation with your young person that you became less effective. Go back there. I want you in your mind to play up until that moment and then stop right before you acted on whatever ineffective behavior it was. Lashed out, walked away, said something on the judgmental side or on the reactive side. So I want you to really, in your mind, kind of practice seeing yourself in that situation again, but stop before you get to that moment. And as you see yourself stopping, I want you to practice seeing yourself taking a step back to take in what's going on. And then practice observing, what were you feeling at that current moment? What were you thinking? And what were you having any urges to do? Did you notice that urge to do whatever ineffective reaction it was? What was your young person doing and saying? Kind of describe it in your mind or on paper, what you notice, really scanning. And then I want to see you practicing proceeding mindfully. Again, keeping yourself in that moment in your mind, asking yourself, what do I want from this situation? How can I be effective? What's the goal? What choice might make this situation better or worse? I want you to kind of listen to your answers. And again, you can pause me, kind of go back through each of these steps with that situation in mind to answer. When you asked yourself, what can I do to be effective? What's the goal? With what you came up with now versus what you did in that moment, are they the same or are they different? What do you think the outcomes would have been if you'd have chosen the newer solutions from this practice? Okay, so just food for thought. Keep thinking about how can I stop in either reason mind or emotion mind. At this point, you might know what to do in order to respond effectively. However, if emotions are still high and or I need to keep my emotions down, I'm going to give you some strategies. They are listed on your handout for the day. So each of these boxes is a different strategy you can use to kind of bring down the intensity of what you're feeling, right? So our emotions can become really high and really intense, especially when it comes down to our young person and the crises that they're experiencing and that you might be a part of or you might be hearing about. And knowing what to do with such strong emotions is pretty critical for you as well as it is for your young person to learn and figure out. But we only have control of ourselves. So let's kind of talk through what some of these strategies can be. Taking a mindful breath. When we have strong emotions, we tend to restrict. Our breathing becomes more shallowed, and that actually sends this feedback to our brain to amp up the emotion. There must be a reason that we're upset. And so there's this whole system that's in place. If we try to physically slow ourselves down, we can get back into a wise mind, a more balanced approach where we can respond. Sometimes, though, breathing doesn't work. It goes out the window. So a more intense strategy might be go grab something like ice and hold it in your hands, or grab an ice pack. If it's really cold outside, go outside barefoot and stand out on the concrete. Do something that targets your senses so your brain gets distracted from the emotion and from the thoughts that you're having and kind of brings down the intensity. It's a distraction, it's temporary, but it can help bring that intensity down so you can go back to that stop skill. Ask for a moment for a break to go to the bathroom. Splash some cold water on your face. Again, really using some of your senses to bring that intensity down. If needed or if possible, ask for 30 minutes to process the situation and do more intensive skills like taking a cold shower or running and exercising, taking a hot bath to really calm your system down so that you can figure out how to respond instead of react. Sometimes you can do that and sometimes you can't. Recite in your mind, name, your young person's name, is doing the best that they can. My young person is doing the best that they can in this current moment. It may not look the best and it may not be effective, but it is their best at that time. Half smile is all about relaxing the tension from your forehead down to your collarbone, because we hold a lot of tension and there are a lot of muscles that are directly connected to our brain. And so if our face is really tense and upset, it's going to keep us upset. So try to relax our face, all the muscles that you can, and then do something called half smile. Think about it as a Mona Lisa. It's not a big smile and it's not a grin. A tight grin will actually make you feel worse, because that's kind of that masking, like everything's fine when it's not. A half smile is a relaxed, soft smile that it's just the corners of your lips turned upwards slightly. People are probably not going to notice it. And that's my half smile. Let go of other body tension. We started today with a body scan. So notice if you're holding any tension in your shoulders and your neck and your fists and your jaw, wherever it might be, and try to relax your system, because again, your body communicates with your brain and will just keep you more upset than you need to be. While you're talking to your young person, grab some lotion and slowly massage the lotion into your hands during the conversation as a form of self-soothe. Or drink tea or something on the more soothing side. You can engage soothing your senses while having a conversation so that you can keep balanced and so you can respond instead of react. Choose a couple of these to practice throughout the week. Maybe some of these are things you already do, but maybe some of them are pretty new to you. I would suggest trying to practice a couple of things that are a little outside your comfort zone with it. So let's switch into reason mind. And remember, those anchor points you just recognized with reason mind, they're critical in helping you make the changes that you need to. Because again, if you don't know that you're in reason mind, you can't pull yourself back into wise mind. In reason mind, you actually have to bring in more emotion, as opposed to emotion mind, you want to reduce your emotions, not cancel it out, but reduce the intensity that you're feeling. So too little focus on emotion can lead us away from our goals. So again, if you're going to use the stop skill for reason mind, stop, take a step back, observe, and proceed mindfully. For the next few minutes, I want you to think about a situation in which you responded in reason mind. Really bring that situation to mind. And I want you to see if you can pinpoint any of those anchor points you just recognized, any thoughts or body sensations or lack of feeling that you had, and also pinpoint the ineffective reaction that you might have had in reason mind during that interaction. And once you have that in mind, I want you again placing yourself back in that moment and leading up to it, I want you to practice stopping. Stop yourself right before you do whatever ineffective reaction it is. I want you to see yourself taking a step back and observing, bringing in the emotional content of the situation. And proceeding mindfully by asking yourself, what do I want from this situation? How can I be effective? What's the goal? And what choice might make the situation better or worse? And again, you can pause me if you want to take longer with this. I want you to think about some of the solutions you came up with. Were they different than what you actually decided to do in that moment? Or were they the same? And what kind of outcomes did it have for you? So, again, if reason is too high, this may be a time that you're maybe too focused on solutions, the facts of the situation, and just not seeing the importance of the situation. So maybe something doesn't seem as important as it is to your young person. If reason is still too high and or I need to maintain it, I will, here are some strategies. And they're listed again on your worksheet. So we had already gone through the situation and the anchor points that you just recognized. And so sometimes if stop isn't working, again, we can take a mindful breath. We can remember, in order to be effective, you need to attend to their emotion. What are they feeling? They may not even be telling you how they're feeling. You might guess, but you have to attend to the way that they feel in order to be coming from a more wise-minded place. And again, recite in your mind, my young person is doing the best that they can. Slow yourself down. Try not to jump into fixing. Fixing can kind of be invalidating to someone, like this is a problem that's just very easy to fix, and it might be an easy situation to fix, but that doesn't feel good when that's the first response. Let go of your agenda and listen and look for the emotion in their experience. They might be telling you, they might not be telling you. Another strategy is recalling a time that you actually had a similar experience. What did you feel? Can you actually empathize with them? You're not making it about you, but it's a way to connect emotionally. And especially if you're kind of stuck in reason mind and here are the facts and here's the solutions, it's just as simple as doing that. Try to pull in an emotion by connecting to how you've maybe dealt with emotions in the past or how you felt in the past. Maybe not even solving the emotional problems, but how did you feel? Can you empathize with the way they're feeling? Let go of thoughts like just do it or it shouldn't be that hard and replace them with, okay, what makes this difficult to complete for you? Let's talk about it, about what it's like for you when this happens. Really engage in what the experience of that situation is like, or the task, or whatever problem they're coming to you with. Really get to know more about what it's like for them. So those are a couple strategies to help you find your way out of reason mind and back into wise mind. So again, choose a couple strategies that you can practice for the week and try that out when you find yourself caught up in reason mind. So just to kind of recap what we've done today, I've introduced the different states of mind. We've talked about building anchor points into reason and emotion mind. And then we talked about when you notice that you're there in either state of mind, because you can recognize those anchor points, using new strategies or building on the strategies you have to really work to find that wise mind response to help you respond in a more effective way that meets your young person's needs. So continue to build your anchor points throughout the week and try new strategies, and we'll kind of problem solve at the end of the month. All right, best of luck. Have a good week.